time, and then the editor effectively tried to oust him.
So, as we can see after watching this video, huge leadership issues appeared even before the production of the newspaper started. It is obvious that there was a kind of battle of powers between Pidger and Keith, due to the fact that there was no real leader. Even Alan Ayling, who was the CEO at this time, had no influence on the editing process. So that was in part due to the committee decisional structure. So consequently, as we can see in this video, Keith tried to expose his vision of the newspaper with this recruitment policy, consisting in choosing any journalist while it was not those proposed by Joe Pidger. And after this, Keith and Pidger had been asked to make a dummy of the newspaper, and instead of Keith making it in collaboration with John Pidger, he decided to make his own dummy, and John Pidger made his own with Alan Ayling. In the end, they were asked to present it to the committee, and obviously Keith's dummy was much more following his ideas, and John Pidger was much more following what the founders wanted the newspaper to be. And in the end, Pidger asked the committee to pay Keith off and take the responsibility of producing the newspaper, but the committee decided to keep Keith producing the newspaper alongside John Pidger dummy. So as a result, John Pidger just quitted, and Alan Ayling reinvented himself as editorial director. So from this moment, a kind of barrier appeared between Keith and his staff and the founders. There were conflict of ideas, and it seems pretty obvious from that moment that the newspaper was not going to be a good one.
No. One thing that we need to say is about the content of the paper itself, because at the end of the day, that's perhaps the most important thing to establish to get a solid base of readers. You could say that the content itself, the issues facing it, were compounded by a lot of these logistical and managerial issues facing News on Sunday, such as the impasse between owners, managers, and employees. It's a pretty clear example of how the management issues don't just stay within the management sphere of the business operations, how it trickles down and in the end has a direct influence on every aspect of it. Something that that the editor should have kept in mind before starting their conflict over who has more power. Now, the paper initially, they wanted to have the slogan "No tits, but a lot of balls" as kind of a play on the fact that there was a lot of nudity featured in many of these tabloids at the time that were already established in the market, and they wanted to show themselves as different. And the idea being that they were going to go after controversial issues, the hard things, the things that other people aren't willing to talk about. But the thing is that due to you could argue well-meaning, but in the end over-eager desire for correctness in all forms, this was rapidly dropped. And you could see these internal conflicts. They couldn't even agree on a slogan for the paper because they thought some people would find it offensive. And in the end, the members of staff were able to get their own way, the slogan removed because of some of the democratic approaches to decision-making in the News on Sunday. And when you couple this with the narrow focus of the articles, especially when you compare it to the Mail on Sunday, perhaps its biggest competitor in terms of size as well as political affiliation, it juxtaposed the aims of promoting potentially controversial issues with the desire to sanitize everything that was written in an effort to make sure that not even a potential reader of the paper would find something offensive or controversial. And this led to articles which were of little or no interest to their target left-wing British audience. So they made an inappropriate product for their market.
So now we are going to show you another extract, which is the consequences of the failed recruitment policy of Keith, testimonies of the staff.
So as the video shows, it was evident that there was a significant lack of experienced staff working in News on Sunday. It was seen that the launch of the News on Sunday was such a failure because they didn't get the first issue right, and launches of other newspapers have indicated the huge importance of getting the first issue right, as this is what will encourage other people to buy the newspapers after it. The News on Sunday released their first main headline story about a boy in Brazil who had to sell one of his kidneys to get medical care. Although most agreed this was a worthwhile issue, the story was considered inappropriate as a lead story of a British Sunday newspaper. Much of this blame lay in the inexperience of their staff. Many controversial decisions were made by managers and staff, such as the creation of headquarters in Manchester instead of London, and the establishment of a paper with too small a budget and no decision-making strategy. Such poor judgments contributed to the overall managerial issues within the paper and the ultimate failure of the News on Sunday.
Okay, so we believe there's a fundamental reason for the failure of the News on Sunday was this fact that journalism was seen to have taken a backseat. The management made it essential for all staff to attend equal opportunities awareness courses as well as workshops, which would increase their knowledge of disabilities and ethnic minorities. Now, on one hand of the argument, this can be seen as good. It harmonises the workforce, encourages people to get along better, and ultimately could increase the working environment as a whole. However, and what we believe to be more important, is the fact that it kind of takes the emphasis off of journalism. For a national newspaper to have its main focus not being journalism is a significant flaw, especially in the management. We believe that the News on Sunday should have trained its inexperienced staff in the field of journalism in order to increase the content of the paper to that as a standard of the competitors.
Upon News on Sunday's launch, it became clear that the market gap for a Sunday newspaper was much smaller than anticipated. News on Sunday was never able to build up a big enough readership in order to break even, which may have been largely due to the fact that Mail on Sunday, it constantly had competition against Mail on Sunday, which was already a well-established and successful Sunday newspaper. Mail on Sunday had the advantage over News on Sunday in that it had also been in the market for 5 years and therefore had 5 years worth of experience. Although it may be argued that News on Sunday wanted to take a different editorial approach with a more left-wing stance, it was evident that with the combination of both managerial issues and several failed attempts to restyle the newspaper's format, that the public had less interest in this newspaper.
Okay, so in terms of the News on Sunday, what were the seeds of the disaster and were they sown early? We believe that there was a significant flaw in management in terms of the pricing strategy. As you can see, News on Sunday, in terms of per unit, cost £5 to produce. The News on Sunday was sold to the public for a cost of 25 pence. This means that for every paper sold, News on Sunday will make a loss of £4.75. Now, we believe to overcome this, the News on Sunday could have adopted two solutions. Firstly, they could have placed the price of their product above the cost of production. But then you ask yourself the question, who in their right mind is going to buy a newspaper for over £5? Therefore, we believe that the management should have researched into new ways to find ways of getting cheaper cost of production in order to decrease the gap between the cost of production and the price which the paper was sold. As it was, due to these decisions, the News on Sunday was bankrupt within 4 weeks, and a few weeks after that, it was completely dead. Pricing strategies like this totally defy business logic and conveys that they were almost doomed to fail from the start.
So to conclude with that, we could say that the management issues of News on Sunday caused its failure. The initial management leadership issues and the inability to resolve it caused the failure of the News on Sunday. Alan Ayling was meant to be the leader as he was the CEO, but it did not manage to come over the committee decisional structure problem, and that ended with conflict of ideas and right decision never being taken. When we compare that to the May on Sunday, we could say that they managed to keep the same editing line and to overcome their first issues due to the fact that there was a sole entity in the overall control. That really made a difference and helped May on Sunday to keep and expand the base of readers while producing a quality newspaper.
So we believe that ultimately, poor management and a lack of direct leadership was, in our opinion, the most crucial reason for the failure of the News on Sunday. This is in comparison to the Mail on Sunday, who had a more established management, one which could actually manage people. The inexperienced workforce of the News on Sunday didn't have the know-how of what it took to be successful in the journalism field. And this, combined with the absurd pricing strategies, shows again a significant flaw in management, as the company were never really able to make a profit. This is vastly unlike their competitors, the Mail on Sunday, who to this day are one of Britain's leading Sunday newspapers after the collapse of the News of the World in 2011. On behalf of me and my team, I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and we're welcome to any questions you may have.